I suppose, like everybody else as a kid, I went to the movies and they were always an escape for me. Um, and at the first, I went to see a little movie called Shane in a crazy church hall, Protestant church. And it's a long story, but basically I fainted because the projection broke down and they did a theatre show and I fainted and was carried out. And it kind of separated film from theatre for me. And then when I was about 17, my brother got a brain tumor and he died under an operation. And my father withdrew, but then became very sociable and started a drama group. So I joined a drama group with my father, directing him. And from that, I spent many, many years working in the theatre. And then one of the people I worked with was Neil Jordan. And John Borman offered me and Neil to write a movie. And Neil did a documentary on the making of Excalibur and ended up making a movie with John, and I didn't. And I was in America running a theatre for no money and thinking, how do I get out of this? And watching Neil's movies, which were wonderful, and thinking, I could do that. And so I started writing basically scripts, and that led to me. The first one was produced after the first script I wrote. Both of them were produced. My Left Foot was one of them, and the other was Into the West. It's an amazing movie and an amazing performance by Daniel. I think it's a unique capsule. It'll never be repeated because you wouldn't be allowed to make it now. I mean, you just wouldn't be able to cast an able-bodied actor in that part anymore, which is probably for the better. And I think the movie helped to bring awareness to the disabled, And I think it's an astonishing performance. I think it's a very good movie. Still love it. He's more like a poet than an actor, His kind of integrity runs deep, and he's very spiritual, very, very committed to honoring the people he's portraying. And he's a dream to work with, and can do it. He's probably, technically, I would say either him or Charles Laughton are the best actors who ever lived, technically, like able to do anything. And I just love him. In many ways we were a verbal culture, oral tradition. And it wasn't until television came in that me and Neil Jordan start really being the first generation that saw TV. And Neil his mother was a painter, and he was very visual. And I was very lucky that when I did My Left Foot, that the person it was portraying couldn't speak English. So it kind of forced the movie to become visual as opposed to totally verbal. But I wanted to, I suppose, illustrate or talk about the kind of, I would call, schizophrenic situation of, for want of a better word, like a colony of a huge power, and the effect that has. And I suppose the difficulty is that the corollary of schizophrenia in verbal would be hallucinations. And I've never got that far visually. Like, I look at Van Gogh and I think he got that far, he understood the kind of hallucinatory nature of visual stuff. And that'd be very interesting if any filmmaker could ever do it. I don't think anybody ever has. And, you know, I'm not sure film is as visual a medium as people think, you know. I think it's got many elements. One is sound, obviously. Many elements. And sometimes the visual is hard because the visual sometimes interferes with the emotional. So if you want to capture emotions, you got to be careful what you do visually, how far you go. And I think now we've arrived at a place where, and not many people discuss this, but the old system was 24 frames. So movies were framed, and each 2-hour movie probably contained 5 to 10 minutes of darkness. In flickerings, they were called the flicks. But people basically believed that what they were watching had happened. Somebody had witnessed it with a camera. And people don't believe that anymore. People think that it's created from behind the screens or on the surface in pixels. So it's broken the belief system with the audience. And so they don't really want dramas anymore. They want visual cartoons. And that's a difficult place. It's coming from my background as a playwright, yes, insofar as, you know, I was always very, I didn't observe the 3-act structure in the theater. Like, I was much better when I was loose and free. And it was only when I got the film that I understood the 3-act structure in drama. But what I'm talking about is more philosophical. It's more like a belief system. So film is just another belief system. It's just a way for us to engage with a like, the main thing people say when they watch a film is, do you believe it or not? And if you don't believe, you get taken out of the film. So that's like religion. So each movie starts projecting a belief system. And if you can't buy into it, the suspension of what Coleridge called the suspension of disbelief is crashed. So nowadays, like, the belief system of most film is, I would say, Protestant red state America. You know, and that story is done so many times with a superhero who saves the world. Like, it's embarrassing.